first coach told me to always develop the pieces. Can you believe he forgot his own advice? Hi, today I'm going to tell you about the concept of piece development. This is one of the most basic principles we learn as we are starting chess, and it is also one of the principles that players of all levels ignore the most. You see, the idea is that our pieces in the initial squares are worth a lot less than they would be if they were outside in the middle of the board doing something active. So for example, after e4 and e5, we want to play knight f3, developing the knight, attacking a pawn. Then the opponent typically develops the knight, defending the pawn, right? Then we can, let's say, develop our bishop, they develop their bishop, we castle, knight f6, knight c3, and the game keeps on going, right? But the overall message is that with each move, we want to take one piece out, and ideally, we don't want to move the same piece multiple times because it means that other pieces will fall behind in development. I'm going to show you a game that I played against my first chess coach. This is the instructor that taught me how to play when I was in kind of a school class around 5th grade. That was around 2001, and I finally played this game against him in 2008. At the time, I was around 2400 and he was around 2150 FIDE. So it was a very interesting game, and it's also a little bit ironic that your own coach would not necessarily follow the basic principles that he and I and everyone else know so well. So, well, let me show you the game. We started with e4, d5, takes and queen takes. Okay, so this is the Scandinavian defense, which is generally known to be an okay defense, but perhaps not the most correct, right? But it does get played a lot. And here he played bishop f5, which is not a typical move. It's much more typical to, let's say, play c6 and knight f6, and perhaps this game will show why. We played bishop f5. I think it's somewhat improvising the opening, right? Trying to surprise me. He doesn't typically play this. He wanted to take me out of my comfort zone, but I think it kind of backfired. Because now I play knight f3, he played e6, which is not a great move, because it kind of locks this bishop out, which is typically okay. But in this particular position, it will somewhat backfire because I have an immediate knight e5. What's the point of knight e5, right? It's like I have a few ideas. Actually, I played this because I had seen one of my friends play this before in another position similar, and I was taking inspiration from that because it worked so well in his game. I thought it would work well in my game as well. My idea is two things. One, if you do nothing, or let's say if you play c6, then I will play g4, then h4, and I'm attacking the bishop, you see? So now this bishop is kind of about to get trapped in some kind of a funny way. If my opponent played f6, I'll just take, and then bishop c4, and I have a lot of pressure, right? It's just very unpleasant, right? Like, why would black want to have this? Now, you might be thinking, well, I mean, aren't the pawns on g4 and h4 kind of weak? Yeah, they kind of are, but not enough to be a problem. The pawn on e6 is way more vulnerable, and the pawns on g4 and h4 kind of give me some space, so it's not all bad. So here, I would say that we have kind of a clear advantage for white, and then if my opponent had played knight f6, I can play bishop d2. Now h5 is a real threat, because if you play bishop e4, I'll just take because of the discovery attack against the queen. So now the game could have continued with queen b6, queen e2, rook b1, and then here I can just play bishop g2, and this is actually quite clever, right? You see, because here I have two pawns down, but it's really not a problem for me because you see I'm about to play something like h5, trapping the bishop, and I can also play rook takes b7, which is extremely dangerous. It kind of breaks the opponent's position apart almost. So after, let's say, a5, hoping to play bishop e4, I can just castle and the rook takes b7, and that's kind of a win for me. I really don't see how my opponent is going to defend himself. Either the queen is getting trapped or some bunch of other problems are going to happen. There were better ways to defend, like maybe on move 6, instead of playing c6, maybe play knight c6. It's already a little bit weakening, but it would have been an okay way to play. But instead he played h5, and I think here he started to show a little bit of nerves. Forget about this g4 idea entirely, but it's already kind of dangerous because by doing this, he kind of wastes a tempo, right? So here I play knight c4, which is another standard move in this kind of lines against the Scandinavian. I'm just harassing the queen and forcing the queen into an uncomfortable square. And now my opponent had some options to consider. One option could have been queen a6, and then after bishop f4, I'm basically threatening knight d6, which is kind of nice, right? I'm basically attacking the queen, and then it's kind of dangerous, right? So my opponent could have played queen c6 to get out of that threat. And there's a general principle that I want you to remember. The principle is, if you have lead in development, it's typically a good idea to open the center. So here, the most natural way for me to play would be d5. You see, if you take, I just bring my knight, and this is so powerful, right? So dangerous. But instead, here, black could have played queen d7, then, well, queen f3. I'm kind of creating an X-ray attack against the pawn. Then you play knight f6, knight e5, then check. And at this point, you know, black is starting to have some big concessions. So you can play knight b d7. And then a move that is kind of natural, but also looks good, is just long castle. And why do I play this? I just want to, get my king into a safer square, but at the same time bring the rook at the same time, gaining some tempos. And I would say this is like nearly winning, right? It's like, how can you protect? And you see, this is like a typical thing that happens, by the way, when you have a development advantage. It's like you develop quickly, your opponent falls behind, then your opponent has to waste all their tempos just defending, not even developing, just defending. And then at some point, we just break through. For example, here, if you play bishop d6, I will take, then I will take on d6. And here I'm a pawn up, I'm bringing the other rook right away. And of course, if you castle short, maybe I'll just take on h5. Either way, I am 1 pawn up, I'm gonna be 2 pawns up, complete win. Okay, let's come back. There's a lot of interesting lines. So we've seen what happens after queen a6, right? So basically queen a6 is not an attractive option. So instead of that, my opponent could have just played queen b4. This is what happened in the game. And here I was thinking, I have this like a special opportunity to keep developing and gaining tempos. So the move is bishop f4. And you see bishop f4 has a few interesting ideas. One of them is like, for example, you see I'm attacking the pawn. That's like the obvious. But let's say you played c6. I have a few options. One option is just play bishop d6. Kind of very clever move, right? Kind of a brilliant move. And then the point is that if my opponent took, I just have a3. The queen is trapped. All the squares are covered. There is nothing to be done. Instead, my opponent played queen e7. And the goal of queen e7 is just kind of go back and try to stabilize the position. So maybe now you can even take a little pause and think, if you were white, how would you continue here? And the key is that you cannot make a slow move. It's a very typical slow move. Many players, even my own students, when I ask them, they say, I'm going to play a3 to kick out the queen. I'm like, why? The queen is going back anyway. Don't waste a tempo with this. Develop. Okay, what's an attacking move for white? So the move that you can play here is actually queen f3. I'm sure there's other options, but this one is very good and it's based on some very quick and very strong calculation actually. So the point here is I'm attacking that pawn, and black doesn't have a good way to protect it anymore. Because if you play c6, now you leave this uncovered, so I can play check, take, bishop e2, and then whatever you do, I'm gonna play d5 next. And then I'm gonna have this open file and that open file, and this king is just completely open there. So I would say this is winning for white. What else? What about knight c6? Knight c6, blocking the line, threatening the pawn. Here I can sort of call your bluff. And here, to be honest, I had to spend some time calculating because it's kind of a critical move, but I had the brilliant knight a5. You see, knight e5, the whole point is that I'm attacking the pawn on b7. And then if you move the knight away, I can just play check. So you cover, I take, that's gonna be a win because the moment that you trade a bunch of things, I'm gonna end up taking on the a8. Okay, but what else is possible? So after knight e5, if my opponent took with the knight, I can just take on b7, then I can basically use this threat, then I can take here, then I can play check, it's a win. So the critical line, which my opponent didn't want to play for, by the way, is knight takes d4. Now, I take on b7, attacking this rook, creating kind of a vulnerable diagonal, and now check, king d1, and now check, and now king c1. And this is a shocking position. You see, I am about to be a rook down, but I'm completely winning. Can you see how? There's probably a lot of lines, but let me just show you one. Let's say that you take the rook, then I will play check. The only response is rook d7, and I can play check. You cover, and I take, you move, and I play this. And now this is just over, right? Basically the king and the queen are forked, so I'm gonna be, like a queen up for basically nothing. Because this line doesn't work, my opponent becomes a little bit desperate what to do. Another line is, let's say, check with the queen to free this bishop to create a square for the king, but then after I go away, you play bishop d6, I can still play check, knight d7, take, and here we have a clever move, which I believe is forced mate. Here's the line. Check, check, check. Just keep harassing this king, right? Now you play knight f6, blocking your own escape. I can play check, b4. b4 is another kind of a machine-like move, right? The whole point is I'm not gonna let you escape. Basically delivering a mate right now. So if you play something else like knight takes b4, then I'll just play queen e3 mate. So that would have been a very beautiful way for the game to end. But the way that my opponent played was interesting too. And well, I mean, he was losing as well. Just to be clear, in case you're wondering, the position after knight e5 is already winning for white. But here my opponent played knight a5. So obviously I want to develop, I want to keep developing with tempos. So the move is bishop e5 check. Then what to do? You see, if black here covers, I can just take. We've seen this tactic before. The idea is that there's gonna be an attack against that rook in the end. So instead you can play king d8. And you see, now I have to be careful. A lot of people might look at this position, castle, and after c6 remove the bishop, and after who knows what else, maybe play who knows what. But the position becomes sort of consolidated, and then it's not that clear how to even win. No. What we have to do here is open up. So we play the immediate d5. You see, this is a thematic idea because, as I told you before, whenever we are ahead in development, what we want to do to exploit that is to open the center. My opponent here played f6, and I think he was hoping that if I remove the knight, maybe e5 just to kind of close things up. But now I have just simple move. I don't care about the piece because I am so ahead in development that I should be winning anyway. So here I just played long castle. And then, you know, if he takes, I'll play pawn takes with a check, and I have a massive attack. In the game, my opponent just played king c8, then I took on e6. And basically we are back to the same position we were just looking at. So now it's just a question of how do you win here with white? And before we dive into like the specifics, I want to tell you, why is it that we are even winning here, right? I can tell you in words. We are winning because we are ahead in development. We have what? We have 3 minor pieces out. We have a queen in an active position. We have the rook on the open file, and our king is safe. So we have like an army of 5. With black, what do you have? You have a king that is exposed, that's a major vulnerability. You have a bishop, a knight, and a queen. So you have an army of basically 3 with a very clear weakness in the king. So basically it's a 5 versus 3. It's kind of a simple win, right? Now, I understand you're thinking, well, what about this? Rook, knight, and bishop, don't they count? Truth is, in an ending, sure, they count. But right now, no. I mean, you don't have enough tempos to bring these pieces into the game. So the game here actually finished with check. I took on e5, I'm threatening bishop takes e7 or knight d5, exploiting the fork. Then here my opponent played check to offer me a queen trade, and I just played knight d5 and he resigned. You see, if he traded the queen, I'm just gonna give checkmate in 1, right? There is no very good way to prevent this mate. Maybe one way is to play bishop d6, but here I can just take. So I completely recover the piece, and then whatever you do, you're losing because I'm anyway gonna play knight b5 and bishop takes or some other very evil plan. So for example, if he had played knight d7, I would have just taken, and then rook d5. That's it. This is basically game over. Now you may be wondering, what exactly did I learn from this game, right? It's like it was a little bit of tactics, a little bit of principles, but what we really learned here is, number one, the importance of developing our pieces, right? We learned, first of all, the concept of developing, the importance of developing our pieces, and then what happens when our opponent doesn't. How we exploit the mistake. How did we exploit it? We exploited it with aggressive, fast-paced moves, right? We never took a pause. We never played a silly move like a3 or something that it was not related to the win, right? We just kept on developing. Use one move per piece, as much as possible. Then we castle, and then immediately we try to get involved our rook as well. And then at the end, it's a little bit of calculation, but it's not just calculation, it's calculation that is based on a position that is already winning for you, okay? Thanks for watching. This channel is all about helping you learn and grow at chess. Hit like, subscribe, and join our Discord. It's full of learners just like you who are discussing openings, puzzles, and new video ideas.